Hello, Assalamu alaikum. In previous classes, we've been talking about using CSS to create web pages, specifically creating a full layout web page using a CSS with responsive effect. In today's lecture, again continuing from there, we will be designing a full web page as this type with a web page, headers, simple menu, but we will divide the menu with 3 buttons being on the left and 1 button being on the right for some specific cases with some content and then a different 3 layout. And this website is supposed to be a what we call a responsive website. So that as soon as the size of the page change, the content would also change their orientation and placement. Okay. So this is a responsive website, and in this tutorial, basically, we will be trying to cover how you can design a simple web page using CSS from scratch. This is Dr. Ishan Bhatti. If you are for the first time, please don't forget to subscribe the channel so that you can get updates on all these tutorials. So don't forget. Okay, so let's begin. Now, let's start from the basic code. So if I come here, click on new. Let's go new. If I can bring new, thank you. Okay, so we have a new page and we'll start from scratch in order to create this particular website. Now, in order to do that, the basic code is obviously we start with HTML and then we will move to CSS. Okay, so we start with HTML and backslash HTML. As you know, that this is the least compulsory component that we need with every single code. And then we have something called head and backslash head tag, and then we have something called body, and then we have something backslash body. Okay, now we need these 3 components no matter what. Then we go here and let me save this page as, and we save it to a folder. Now again, we have been talking about this multiple times. Whenever you work on something, make sure you create your own folder. For example, website responsive. Okay, so this is my folder name. Okay, and I save my web page here. Usually if it's the first page, it's supposed to be index. In our case, I will just rename it so that I can refer to this page later on. This is supposed to be menu 3 col and responsive. Okay, I'm just giving this name so that I know what this file actually contains later on for my own referencing, but name it whatever you basically want. And obviously we will be talking about creating a consistent websites, and then the first page for that would actually be index.html. okay, so we save this page as my own name for my sake, but you can name it whatever you want. And we have a basic HTML page. Within this HTML page, we will start with what we call my div tag. Okay, now I like to use a div tag a lot because div is more easy to control and more easy to manage. Okay, so welcome to responsive web layout. Okay, I think spelled wrong. L-A-Y-O-U-T layout. Okay, responsive web layout. Okay, so this becomes my heading or my header. Okay, that's one thing. Then we come here and I create another div. Okay, this second div is for my menu. Okay, this menu can be based on what we call direct links. I think this is what we did in previous tutorials as well. Or in this case, what I will like to do is I will try to use an unordered list. Now we use unordered lists so that the menus are organized in a proper list order and they can be managed easily. Some people tend to use this as well, and some people prefer to use it in a different manner directly. They use the A tags as a link and then they can organize that. Depends on you how you basically work with them. For this tutorial, I'm using unordered list and then list item, and within list item basically we are placing the links. So if I just put hash here, close this, and then this can be, for example, my home, home page. Okay, and that's it. Sorry, Control C. And I can create a couple of links in this page. The first was home, second can be, for example, link 2 in this case, and this can be whatever exercise or page you want to refer it to, depends on you. Okay, and then link 3, link 4, and then finally we can give it one more, and this can be my about page. Okay, or whatever page that you want. Now this is the link that actually we want to throw it on the right side. So 3 links or 4 links on the left, and 1 link specifically we want it on the left side. So this is what basically the task we will be covering here. So once we have this, now the content is basically done. Then we come outside of this div tag. Okay, so one div is for headers, the second div is for what we call our menu links. Okay, then we again create another div. So I like to create divs. Within this div, for example, we can give h2 as a heading, and this is content heading. I guess this is what I should do. And then within this we can give, for example, a paragraph tag. This is test paragraph. Okay, and then I can give another paragraph if you like, or image or whatever contain this. This is second paragraph. Okay, so I have 2 paragraphs within this content as well. Depends on you how basically you want to work, or whatever contents you are designing with that. Then what I do is that if I control S this thing, this is saved now. In order to view this output, let me go into the live view. If I can bring that up, here we go. Thank you. So this is the so far so good website, right? So let me just organize this guy up till here so that I can at least see the code and the view as we go along. Okay, so simple website we have designed, nothing specific. This is just pure HTML. Obviously I need to add few more columns inside this, so that website is basically contains columns, and we can organize those columns as we go along. Okay, control S. Let me just correct that error. Okay, div is there. So this is done now. Now we need to add 3 more columns to this website, so we can do that now, or let's just create the basic link and we will add that later on, so to make things more like we say understandable. Okay, so we come back into our what we call new file. Okay, this new file would now contain my CSS. Now CSS, I tend to prefer to use it as an external CSS. It allows me to manage that what is inside my HTML and what is inside my CSS. Some people tend to prefer to use internal CSS, depends on how you want to do. But because this website is supposed to be used by multiple pages, this website is supposed to contain multiple pages, so we need one CSS to maintain all those multiple pages. So it's always recommended that you create that. So once we come into this, we start with, for example, body tag. This is sometimes we tend to do depending on people to people, but it is recommended that you set the margin is equals to 0. Okay, what this will basically mean, I will show you in a moment. Let me save this file initially. I think it was website responsive. Yes, this was my website, and I can say CSS style, okay, and .css. Don't forget to give the extension if depending on your editor you're using. By the way, I'm using brackets editor. What brackets allows us to do, again, it's a simple editor for web editor, but it has this live feature. So as soon as you make a change, it will automatically be shown here. You don't need to go into that page and hit refresh again and again. So once we have this, now we have this. Now if I do save this, as you can see, there is a little space between the border and the word that starts. So there is a default margin levels. We want to set that margin level 0. What it allows us to understand is that once you set it to 0, now you can actually start and customize your margins for each different component later on. So we would be doing that. But once you know it's 0, it's easy to kind of organize your web page as you go. But if I press space, there is no change here. That's because if I go back into my HTML, we have not yet linked that HTML with the CSS. So we will create a link tag. Okay, press enter, link, and then I think this is supposed to be type. Okay, the type is, if you remember correctly, text, I think text/CSS. Okay, so now basically we need to specify the relation. The relation is supposed to be style sheet, STY style sheet. Sorry, what's happening? If I go back, come here, STYLE style SS sheet. Okay, and then we need the H reference, which is supposed to be style sheet 3. So within the same folder, I have only this one file, and it has brought that for me. So now what we've done, we have linked it. I think this is where the mistake was. There we go. So correct that mistake. Type is equal to text/CSS, and now we have what we call style sheet and H reference. Now press S, and then we come back into our code, and then we press S. Now again, if I press S, there is no change here. It's not going to 0. That's because I've used the same equal sign. Again, the simple mistake that we tend to do very commonly. And then now if I press S, so now you can see this because there's no space between each of the characters. So again, to ensure you use a semicolon not equals to, like I did in my case, correct that mistake. So the first step that we do is, in order to set this page, is we set the body parameter to 0, body margin to 0. What it will do, it will ensure that your text starts from the border and there is no default margin. Now we control the margin ourselves later on as we start to go. Okay, now what we need to control what we call this header tag. So what I do is, first let me specify a class is equal to, and this can be header. Okay, we again specify class with every div tag because we have multiple divs available within our code, and we want to control each div separately, and we want to associate styles for each div separately. In order to do that, we need to create them and segregate them in form of classes. So first thing we do is we div class. So then now this becomes a different div. This is my div CLA class, CLASS class is equal to menu, MENUE menu. I think that should do the trick. Okay, so we come here and we specify UL as class is equal to, and I can give it, for example, top navigation. Okay, actually top nav this is a common word that we use, and you would find this top navigation if you use templates and check website contents a lot. Basically it's become like a norm. You tend to use navigation, and even for a div main you just specify as nav. So this basically means that this is my nav area, or sometimes we just use it as a content or whatever basically you use. But common names you would find them that if it's a menu, it's a navigation menu, it would have nav. It's a top navigation knob, left navigation, left nav. So it's more like a code within the code, you know, if you go for that. Anyway, so name can be any name. You can specify any class name as you like, but like I said, you know, commonly people tend to use these names, and you would find them in notes and tutorials as well along. So we have done two things now: class for header, class for div navigation, and class for UL. Then each of these tags also need to be classes. Why? Because we have to create home as an active link, so that when whichever links become active, user knows that this is my active link. And then I have to shuffle this to a right side. Okay, for example, this is supposed to be on active right side. So in this case, I can go here and I can specify a class for this A link, and then I can make it, for example, active. Means that once user selects this page, that particular link will have a different color to tell the user that you are actually, this link is active. You have clicked on this link and the content of the page are being displayed for this particular link. It means active. This again, we are trying to use another trick here, that within our menu 3 icons appear at the left side, 4th pick appears on the right side. So in this case, for example, I can just simply name it right. So this about option would appear on the right side. So if just in case if you need to segregate few menus, again, simple menu we have done in previous lecture. We're just trying to play with few additional things. Once you have this, if I press S, again, this is just classes, so there's no change here. Now I go back into my code. Let's start navigation and let's start working with what we basically will be doing here. So here, the first thing that we will do is we will work with what our top navigation bar. So I will just use .header header, bracket start, bracket close. So basically we are referring to header. The first thing I like to do is change the background color is equal to, for example, light gray. Okay, semicolon, and that should give it a light gray color. I like to give it a padding, for example, 10 pixels, so that it has that 10 pixel padding. Margin for this one, I let it be at 0 content, and then for example, text alignment, text align is equal to center. Okay, so now we change the color, we gave it a little bit of padding so that it doesn't start right from the border. Then text alignment, because it's supposed to be a header, we gave it a 0 thing. Obviously there can be an icon here, there can be a logo here, there can be more content here depending on how you want to organize this. For our sake, we just leave it there. You can change the text color, font color, whatever you basically prefer. It's up to you. So for example, I can use a color and I can specify, if I can find a nice color. Actually, we don't remember the code names a lot, so this is something that I tend to use regularly. Okay, dark cyan, I get it. So we have our top header complete. Now let's just move into the second component, which is navigation bar. How do we control the navigation bar? Again, we have something called top nav. Okay, we use the top nav. Within this top navigation, I have certain code. Now again, I have used here dot top nav dot header. Dot basically refers to the connection, as a connection operator that would connect that any tag having this header as a class, these settings would be applied on it. Any tag that has basically top nav as a class name, these settings will be applied on it. So we don't need to specify the tag name, like we just need to specify dot and the name of that particular class, and CSS would automatically use it. So in previous examples, we use the name. So I can write div, which means go into div tag top class dev top nav, and that would be making it specific there. But if I remove top nav, still it will work fine. Okay, so you can just use the top nav. Basically, it means that go into this and apply it. So once we are here, and in our case, top navigation actually was UL, sorry. So an underline list, we can apply that, or you can leave it blank. In our top nav now, the first thing we would do is list style, because we have used unordered lists, so it has these bullet points. So in order to remove these bullet points, I think we will use list style type and just use none here. Okay, Once you specify none and press save, see this, the icons are gone. Second thing we will do is we will set the margin. Margin, margin is equal to, I guess, 0. What this will basically mean that yes, 0 px, control S. Okay, what this will basically mean that now your margin is now set to 0, which again we already have it here. If you can see a small dotted line already appearing in that particular place, then we will use padding is equal to 0 as well, control S. And then what we can do is overflow is equal to hidden. This is again certain setting that we use it in case the components are overflow, and outside of that area, to size this, hide those areas. Okay, overflow, again, like the word implies, it means an overflow. So if something overflows a container, what should happen to it? So the container size is small and content is large. So basically here we mean that just hide that content area. So a minimum, maybe we are just telling it that if certain areas are not light, just hide them. Okay. Finally, background color, usually just specify dark gray and then specify color S. Now hashtag is basically has a hexadecimal value for a color. You can specify by name as well or hexadecimal values. I remember few numbers with their hexadecimal, few colors with their hexadecimal, so I use them. Okay, so now we have a basic top navigation set to it, but still the links don't appear like a link or a button. That's because we are going to control them using the li tag. Remember, this is our UL, so we have controlled the UL, but the item itself are within li, so I will be controlling these li's separately. Okay, so we can say go into list item. Okay, and then list item should be, for example, list item, in other words, top nav list item, and then make it float left. Okay, what this would allow us to do that to ensure that our list items are basically floating on the right side. If I left side, if I make it right, now they are on the right, and then if I make it center, I think they will appear somewhere around centering area, CENTER. Okay, they just appear like centered. Okay, so if you make it left, they appear like left. Okay, so this is the first thing we did for the link item. So now the links appear with the left. Now let's control the individual anchor tags. So we go into what we refer as, we can refer it to UL top nav space li space a. Okay, now what this basically means is that unordered list dot top navigation class. So go into unordered list in top navigation class. So those unordered lists that have the top navigation class, because you can have more unordered lists in your content area. Okay, so we are specifying it that just access that unordered list that has top navigation bar. Inside this there is a list item. Inside each list item there is an anchor tag. Okay, so this is the hierarchy that is following. UL, within UL we have a class, then within each UL and class we have basically an li tag, then within each li tag we have an anchor tag. Okay, so this is the structure basically it is following. So same thing we are doing in our CSS as well, or we specify here that in our code, if I come back, I'll just bring it up a little bit, ul dot top nav, go inside ul top navigation class. Inside it there's a list item, space, there is an anchor item. Okay, so in order to access the sub hierarchy elements, this is what we do in CSS. There is no need of accessing the further dot or anything, because for class we use dot. In order to access the class item we use the dot, otherwise we just use it as it is. So here we have the list items available. Now here first thing I do is display is equals to block. Basically display block is a CSS property that allows us to control that now your links appear as a block rather than just a simple thing. So if I make this float appear, if I delete it, sorry, float, let me make it center. I think CENTRE is it, or ER, I don't know, remember actually. This is not doing center, still not working. Anyway, let's just leave it to this point. So now you can see this, if it is blocked, now even if I click on home or if I move cursor in front of it, still it appears as a link. But if I remove this block, Control X, Control C, now if my cursor is over the text, it's linked, but as soon as it moves away from the text, now there is no longer block behavior. So this is what we do. Typically a link behaves just like a link. So wherever there's a text, there is only a cursor change over it. This is a hot link. However, as soon as you move your cursor, now it just becomes a normal link. But because we want this to be a button type, So we have made it as a block. So now it means that whatever the entire block area is basically considered as a hyperblock. Okay, so this is a display as a block would basically mean in terms of your anchor point. Then you can say color, for example, can be your white, which would be, sorry, not wheat, W-H-I-T-E, white. Okay, this is your link color. Obviously this underline is there because they are hyperlinks, so we can just say text decoration. I think style or just text decoration would work. Text decoration should work, right? So just come here, text decoration, and just give it none. Okay, what this will do, it will remove the underline links to it, so they appear like a normal link. Perfect. Then we can say text align center. So because we have created them like a block, so we want those text to be at the center of each block. Okay, and then this float again can be, now see this, it's at the center. Now we can just make it left, L-E-F-T, left, right, and then bring it here and just remove this. So now they appear on the left side as a blocks. Finally, I think because the text are very close to each other, we need to give them some space so that each link appears separately. We would use something called padding, and padding can be like 10 pixels on your top and bottom all around, and I guess 10 pixels from your left and the right. That should do the trick. Semicolon. Depending on how basically you want to work, you can increase the size, for example 14 or 15 to maybe 20 if you want a bigger buttons. Okay, so if you see this, you have now a bigger links button, maybe 15 if you want them to be square kind of a thing. Depends on how broad and thin basically you want. Okay, left and right, top and bottom. So this can be, for example 12, and this can be like 20. Play around with it, depends on how you want your links to appear. You can make them stand out. Perfect. Okay, so now my links are basically working previously. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to create the what we call the active link and make this appear on the right side of your screen. Okay, so now what we do is first we need to go back into my code, and I have to check that the home icon is supposed to have a class called active. Again, name can be anything, but we specify some name so that we can identify this. This basically means that this home will appear as a different color to indicate that this page is basically highlighted or selected. Whereas about is basically another link that we want to separate from this entire block and send it to a right side. Okay, so that's why we have given this link also a different class name. So in other words, we are having two menus in this thing. You can say the one is on left side, one is on right side. For the left side, you just leave it to the default things as it is, and on the right one we'll have a specific class called right. Then within the left one we have something called class active. So whichever hyperlink becomes active, basically we'll have this particular class. Okay, so we go back into my CSS. Now what I do is I go into this thing again called ul.top and av navigation. Okay, this is again this means that go into unordered list. Okay, inside it there is a list item called A. Go on to A. Okay, and then what we can say is, okay, once you are here, colon, and once you press colon, again the list appears. Now what we are doing here is we are associating a sublinks here. So basically we mean that what should happen when you cursor move over this thing. Okay, so what we can say, we can do a little bit of a control. One small trick is that we use is how do I define it? A hover means whenever your cursor is over it, but we also want to control that if it is not active, then what should happen, because again remember we are using two things now. One is called active and one is called non-active. Okay, so what I do is we use another thing called not bracket dot active. Okay, this is like a conditional operator, like if and else we do. So here what we have done is we have written a condition here that once a cursor moves over this link and it's not an active, so what you do is you change the background color of it. So we change the background color of it, BSCK background, and let me give it color, and for example this color can be 111. Okay, so this now basically means that if I save it, so if it's not active, the color remains default, it doesn't change. Now if I come back here and I can specify again, go into unordered list, give me a top navigation, top and AV. Okay, then go inside list, go inside A, and then within this A we have something called active. Okay, now here again we have specified that a.active means that A, when A has an active class. Okay, so like a ul.top navigation basically specifies the class name. So unordered list dot top navigation, inside this there's a list item, inside list there is A a.active. So whenever it finds an a.active, what are you supposed to do now? So in this case, again, I will just simply change the background color. Again, you can do whatever actions you want to do. In our case, for example, we use a number called bright green, B-R-I-G-H. I think there's no bright green, green color. Okay, so for example, we can specify this lawn green color. Okay, Control S, and when if you come here, menu system, this is again Control S. We come back here. Okay. You don't see update here because this has been somehow turned off. Let me turn it back on. Open HTML file. Make sure there's an index.html. Okay, sorry. Here you go. What's happening? Let me refresh this. I think. Here we go. So we have this thing link. Somehow this thing is broken or what happening? Okay, I'm doing it on CSS. If I come back here on HTML, okay, it doesn't work on CSS. We have to turn the live view on HTML, and then basically it works with that. So sorry about that. So not on CSS. Now it's working. So whatever changes we will do here, again we will see this update somehow. The live view was disabled. So this is what happens now, is so that we have this thing as a green, and other options are now becoming black because of this thing here. Okay, so this again means go into top navigation, list item, under list item, hover. So as soon as my cursor hovers around this thing, if it is not active, okay, this is like a conditional operator that we have used here within CSS to evaluate that if this is not active. So this is currently active, this is not active. So if it is not active, change the color to dark black. So the colors have been changed to dark black. This can be any color you want. So for example, this can be hashtag, for example, F3. If I remember correctly, this basically refers to white color, right? Let me try this. Control S. Yes. See this? So it becomes white color. So if the color is white, you can make the color, for example, black, 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 semicolon. So now the text becomes black and the background becomes white. So you can do that. So it's more apparent that you're going to do the link. Depending on what color theme you are using toward your website, you can do whatever you like. So this is basically controlling your hyperlink with a certain conditional parameters as well. So this cannot be only referred to link, but you can do it with multiple other attributes, multiple other links, images, icons, and whatever you want to control with that. So small thing that we use is, again, this is .active referring to a class. So if this is not active class, then change the color. If it is active class, you can do whatever other thing you want. So for an active class, what should you do? So if it's a long green color, so it's a long green color. Okay. Then what we can also do is for the right side. Now this menu is almost complete. Only about is remaining. So what we do again for this is that go inside UL top navigation. Sorry, top and AV. Okay. Inside it there's a list item. Inside there is an A. For A, there is, I think, list item. Hang on. Let me just confirm this. A tag. Okay. A tag is right. So we can do here is top where list where we left the code. Here it is. Sorry, here is the code. List item A dot right. And let's hope this works fine for us. Right, and for this one we can use a float value, and I think if I make it right, this should do the trick. Why is down there? Pum. Okay, let me click here. RIGHT right semicolon. If I save it, suddenly all of this thing is gone. What happened? RIGHT right. Did I do something wrong? Control X, save it. What happened here? Okay, I opened a different link. Sorry guys. Here we go. Control S, and is there any change? No. Okay, let me increase the size. So about is still there. Basically, in order to shift this particular link just here, we need again a float value. Remember, we used a float value here previously, but here, okay. So we used a float value with li. Okay. Okay. And then we are using a dot right. So if I come back and it's not working, right? Okay. So if I see, press it, it's not working. So a simple workaround can be that instead of using this link with what we call this class with the a tag, let me just cut this. Control X, go inside list and specify this here. Let me test it, then I will explain that it's working or not. So now if I remove this li and just write RIGHT right here, no change. Please change. Do something. S change, refresh. So it's not refreshing only. So here we go, it's working now. Okay, so what I did here is that simply instead of specifying the a tag with the class, right? I just removed the class reference from the a tag and specified it within the list item. Okay, so now the list item has the right tag inside it. Okay, so now list item has the right class to it. Okay, so that's the only change that I made. And then when I go into CSS, I just specified the list item dot right, and now it works. So now you can see this, that this menu is on the left, on the right, sorry, and these three foldings are on the left. So if you even stretch your page, you would find this on your left side, you would find these three on your right side. Okay, simple as that. And similarly, you can control it very conveniently. And here we go, we have the remaining content available. Obviously, this content you can design with your whatever purpose you want. Finally, we need to add few more what we call column layouts inside it, so we can create certain more responsive attitude to it. So I go back into my HTML, and we had this div tag available with our content. Let's just use this div tag alone. This is my like a content div tag, so I can give some style to it. For example, I can say class is equal to body content. Okay, so I remember this, that this is my body content body area. Okay, let me just use a simple name, body area. Okay, so this div has a class called body area. That means that this basically has everything inside it. So if I need to control anything within it, I will basically be using it. Then let's go into div, and I can create a couple of other divs as well. So let me create one more div, and this div will be consisting of, for example, let's have a heading 2, and for example column column 1, and let's give it a paragraph. This is column paragraph. Okay, so here we go. So we have one div here available, and come back here, 2 div, 3 div. So what I've done is I've copy pasted the 3 div. This can be my column 2, and similarly this can be my column 3. Okay, so we have 3 columns created using a div tags. Again, div creates a block, invisible block, and then you write everything inside the block. And then what happens, you control the block, and everything inside the block is basically controlled. So that's how it's easier to manage multiple contents that are inside a particular block. So for example, in each block now I have a heading and a paragraph. I can have an image as well. I can have multiple paragraphs as well. And then I control all this content with this one single block. Similarly, this will be controlled using this block. Similarly, this will be controlled using this particular block. What we do now is that because these are supposed to be class columns, okay, so that we can easily code them. column column, control C, and then this div again column, and then this div again column. So I've specified column on all 3, so whatever settings I do, all 3 columns would basically follow. So we have created 3 columns. I press Control S, and I'm not getting a live view. I don't know why. Let me close this, and let me come back here and CSS. Let me save this and hit this icon again, so that I get my okay, so live view back. So we have this thing, we have these 3 menus. Now we need to work on this content area. Okay, so once we are done, so we have 3 columns added to it, and then finally we can add footer or whatever later on, but we have these 3 columns now created. Now what we need to do is that we need to go and control this column attribute. So what we can do is we can say that our div, or just for example column, column column, and now we need to specify certain settings for that particular column. For example, I can say float 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 is equals to float colon left semicolon. Okay, I think they are already okay, so left. Okay, so once you do that, now we have a 3 column structure properly working. I can also specify, for example, my background color. Usually I do that so that I can segregate that. Background color can be azure, beige. Let me just give it a beige color, semicolon, so that this paragraph is again different. This can have a same single row, heading or image or picture or whatever you want here, and then you can divide your content based on your what we call columns. Okay, obviously because we are working with 3 column structure, it's always recommended to have something called width, and width we use 33.3%. This basically means that your page is divided equally between these 3 columns. Again, 33.3, this is a number that came from dividing 100 by 3 and 100 by 3. Okay, so for example, this is the width of your page. This is like 100%. So because we need 3 columns, so we divide 100 by 3. So if you do a simple math, 100 divided by 3, you get 33.3. So this is where this actually number came from. Okay, So we have this 3 number and we have this column structure from there. Obviously you can do multiple other things with it. For example, we have something called margin to it. We can add margin like 0 so that there is no margin, and then we can have a padding, and then we can add, for example, 5 pixels or sometimes just 2 pixels padding so that it appears to be in smaller area. Okay. Then obviously sometimes what we do is we give it a border as well. So we can give a simple border. I think border can be of 1 pixel space. It can be solid line, SOLID, solid, and it might be, for example, like LIGHT, light, GRAY, gray. Okay, I think if the spelling is right, light, GREY. Okay, and then if I deselected, yeah, light gray. So we have 3 columns available. Now sometimes it just shuffles like that. So what I can do is I will do one more trick if it needed. For now, if I increase the size, you would find that it's okay. Okay, no, it's not working right now. So see this column is not coming at the right place. So what we can do is we need to adjust the width and height parameters correctly so that we can use this correctly. Okay, so for example, if I reduce the padding to 0 and I remove this border 0 pixels, so now these are 3 columns alignment. But this basically means that this is currently equal to 33%, which is exactly the same size. However, once you give it a padding, now it means that it now will take that extra space as well. We talked about this in previous few lectures as well, in terms of width and height as well, that you need to calculate sometimes. So if you have specified 33.3%, means you have equally given the entire column size. However, when you give padding to it or margins to it or borders to it, these parameters also add up to the column width and column size. That's why you would find that, for example, even if I give it 5 pixels, now I have a jump in the column because it exceeds this 33.3 number. Now column width is divided. So if such case is occurring, you may reduce this size to, for example, certain value so that your all columns fit that particular width, because you are using this padding feature as well. Padding basically means you can see this, there's a grid appearing here which indicates that there's 5 pixels added on this side, 5 pixels added on that side, 5 pixels all around. So it increases the width to a certain pixels, which basically exceeds 33.3%, means it exceeds the actual average. Okay, that's why the column actually wraps up down below. So simple turnaround is you reduce that width value, so it's like 31.33% for each particular column, and then we adjust the remaining with the 5% width, and then I can also give 1% border, so there's a small border around it as well. Okay, so if I give it a border 1px, now I see that it's still jumping. So in other words, I just remove this and now I have equal %. Okay, so as soon as it fits, I say that's my value for it. I think that's done. So we have a 3 column structure available. Finally, let's make this responsive. Okay, that's the main task here. So if I increase it, we have this. If I decrease the size, we still have 3 column behaving strangely. So what we need to ensure is that when we have a responsive, these 3 column appear in a row, so does the links. So in order to make this responsive, the one main cool thing we can do, or we usually do, is we use the media parameter, and then we specify the screen. Okay, media basically means whatever media you are using in terms of screen, and then within that screen we basically specify something called max width, which basically represents that whenever the width is maximum 600 pixels, this is what you're supposed to do. Okay, so we come back here. In this thing we specify, for example, the first thing, navigation. So we go into top NAV nav. Okay, so unordered list, top navigation. What happens to the navigation when the screen size is different from what normal screen, right? When it becomes responsive. So we can say that light light.right. Oh, sorry. List item.right, right, becomes right, I think, column. Okay, just leave it to that, comma, and then the next thing is ul.top nav nav. Okay, again, and then we go into list item. All the list item then become basically float colon already appear, none. Okay, this is what we do. This basically means that list top navigation, list item right, because we have a one called right, this as well as all other list items become none. Floating becomes none. None means there's no floating value, so it becomes the default based on the screen size. Simple. Okay, and as you can see this, because we have reduced the screen size, now it is appearing here. Similarly, if I come back here, I will specify .colum and column. Okay, for these columns, I want them to also appear with respect to width. Width is equal to 100%. Hopefully, and as soon as I do the 100%, you can see this, because we have reduced the size here, that already changes to what we call a responsive layout. Semicolon. Done. So now if I go back into my normal view, you would find that you have all three links available. As soon as you reduce the link to a smaller screen size, they now appear in this order. So this basically becomes a responsive. You can check that with basically using, I think, Control-Shift-I. Yes. So in browser, if you press Control-Shift-I and if I make it responsive, I think I should get this link available here as well. I don't know why it's not working here. It should work also here now. I was told that it should work here. It's not working here. I don't know why, but at least I can ensure that it's working at this point. So yeah, cool. Okay, so this is basically creating a simple responsive layout with a header, three links, certain data at the top. This can be your image, this can be your header images, this can be your content area, this can be a message, and then you can divide your content in 3-column structure. And then similarly, you can have a div for a footer. Okay, this is a simple tutorial that allows you to create a simple website layout using your CSS and structure. Obviously, this is just designing the layout. Now it's up to you to put the content in using the same HTML, and then you can control the content using CSS. Okay, this is Dr. Zishan Birthday. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, do leave the feedback down below. And again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you get more cool videos like this coming up regularly. Thank you very much. See you around.